Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for being here today. I thought being the 18th speaker today, it'd be a lot more fun to have a couple of my students come up and join us for the discussions today. So we're going to talk a little bit about student taking ownership over content and what that means for our class. So I am here, Tommy White, Director of the Vlorek Center for Entrepreneurship. I'm also Senior Professorial Lecturer in the Department of Management in the Kogod School of Business. And I have Catherine Maydew and Archie Kamath with us, and I'll let them introduce themselves here in just a minute. The class we're going to be using as sort of an illustration is a complex problems class. So this is the second one that we've heard from today. And the course title is Navigating Leadership. So just a couple of guiding principles that I have on how I infuse AI into my courses. So first and foremost is I always focus on integrity first and enforcement second. I think that's just a natural thing that we should be doing with all of our students and all of the ways that we think about things. So I really keep asking this question a lot. Are you making the right choice? Are you doing the right thing when it comes to using AI? Because AI can be, as we're learning today, is an amazing collaborator, a great, someone to work with as long as you use your citations, and that's certainly important, and not simply as a shortcut. The other thing is the syllabus is absolutely critical to a course, as we all know, but I think even more so in the age of AI. It is definitely the rock of what we do in terms of putting the materials together. However, I've changed the format to where now students are curating the information, they're curating the content, and each one of them is getting an individualized, personalized learning experience as part of that process. And my hypothesis and my sort of philosophy on this is that the more students can keep using AI over and over and over again, they're going to start to learn what's great information, what's good information, what's bad, and what's hallucination. And it's only by doing that hundreds and hundreds of times they start to see what the patterns are, and they can start to to see what's going on, and they can keep asking the questions of Gen AI. I also think it's really important for them to have their own sort of intrinsically motivation to do this. And when they're using their own content and finding their own materials out there, I think they're more motivated to do that. And then finally, I absolutely view my role as an instructor changing, no longer the content provider or the presenter, but absolutely much more as a facilitator, coach, and mentor to the students in my classes. So let's look at the Navigating Leadership course here real quick. And I've infused AI in a couple of ways, and I'm just going to talk about both of them here and then let my students fill in the blanks from that. So the first and foremost is the course materials, as I mentioned. I've set up some chat GPTs that for each class session, students will copy and paste in the class title plus 4 or 5 bullet points. And then AI will generate for them a series of articles and videos for them to watch or read. They can change those up if they want to. If they don't like them or if the video is too long, they have an opportunity to say, give me more, give me something different. They begin to work with the AI. Ultimately, they turn that into a memo post of the reflections, lesson learned, and then we have a deep dive discussion in every class that's probably, 30 to 40 minutes of each of our class sessions. And what's amazing is with 19 students, they're all bringing in 5 to 6 different perspectives of what they read and what they saw, and that makes, for me, I think, a much more enriching environment from that. The second part is the team project. And so what I've done here is I've moved AI from being sort of a source of information to more of a collaborator with it. And so you can call this a persona, you can call it an agentic AI, but what I've done is developed a series of steps for the team projects, which we launched last week. And the idea is to use this as a sounding board, as a brainstorming partner. And you can go very deep with it. I've set up about 10 to 15 steps deep into it. You can go as far as you want to with it, or you can keep it at a very high level. And some of my teams went very deep in it, and they got some really good stuff out of it. Others took a little more of a higher level approach and more of the traditional brainstorming as a team, face to face. And that's totally cool, right? It's figuring out what works and what's the best way for those things to work with everyone. Ultimately, they turn this into a project proposal, and I've given them no template for the project proposal. They're all coming up with all these different neat, cool ideas for what they want to do under the subject of leadership. And then they have a series of activities over the next few weeks, and they'll present their final findings in the last class of the semester here. So those are 2 ways that I've infused AI into the course here. I'd love to let Catherine and Archie give their little bit of their take on the course and some ideas that they have from this. So I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thank you, Professor White. My name is Archita Kamath. I am a first year in the School of Public Affairs. So the first time that I met Professor White, I was like, AI in class? You've never heard of this, right? And the one thing that he told me was integrity. And he said that, you know what, it's really easy for you guys to cheat and use ChatGPT and get the answers that you want. It's very easy, I'll admit. And then I was like, gosh, that made me really think, We're here for our learning, and so it's really important that we stay true to ourselves. We can cheat in these assignments, we can graduate with a degree. When we're in the workforce, when we have to do a presentation, I can't stand up here and, cheat my way through that. So I really think that it's important to build trust. And whenever I see students use AI unethically, what I'm seeing is a lack of trust, that you don't trust your professor to get the help that you receive, or that you don't trust your own ability to create the content that you believe is successful. And so, in the component of how we're using AI in our classrooms, what I'm noticing is that we're learning how to use artificial intelligence effectively and efficiently. We're not using it to replace our own ideas, our own concepts, right? And that's what we have to get better at, because telling students like don't use AI makes it seem like AI is this end all be all horrible technology that we have, when in reality it can be very helpful to promote our ideas. And I think finding that balance depends on the classroom. So in our complex problems class, we can use it for our research. If you're a writing professor, then obviously you're going to be a bit more skeptical, and you're going to say, okay, use it to find synonyms, use it to brainstorm, don't use it to write your entire paper. So I just think that having those guidelines is really, really important within the classroom.
So I'm Catherine Maydew. I am a freshman and psychology major. I'm gonna be transparent. Before joining this class, I was like a big AI hater. I would not use it for anything because I was scared of its impacts on the environment. As well, I was scared if I was using it, I was cheating in some sort of way. But since joining Professor White's class, my opinion on AI has completely changed. I know now how it can be used as a tool, and it's not like your first solution. I am still like conscientious about how I use it because of environmental impacts, but like most things, I believe it's a balance of using it. I believe it's a balance of using it and not using it, like most things in life. So I'll use it for some things, but then I still use my own ideas.
Good. Well, thank you both for your comments and feedback on this. So happy to open up for questions for you all. One that works.
One might not work.
Thanks very much, and thank you both for being here. We really appreciate it. It's nice to have a fresh perspective from you all. A question about the agent model. Are you using a multi-agent model, and did you create each of the agents, and what are the skills that you embedded within each of the agents?
Yeah, I'm probably using agent a little loosely here. It's probably
Okay.
more of a persona, but it's a step-by-step, collaborator that the AI uses. I mean, the
Okay.
teams can use through that. So you can't move on until you've sort of achieved some certain objectives, and the AI keeps having a conversation and dialogue with it. So I'd probably say I'm leaning more towards a persona of what AI represents than probably a full agentic, model there. That's for next year.
Yeah, I was going to say, so are you looking at the new skills and all of the kinds of the things that Claude's doing with skills and the ability to, okay. So we can talk about
Yeah, that's
all
my
these
next level. Yes.
interesting agent-based kinds of models. So thank you.
Yep.
Hi, I have a question about how you're grading these conversations between the students and these personas or agents. Are you going over them one by one? How?
Yeah, so
does
so
that
first
work?
with the content, as I said, I find it amazing what they find and what they bring in. And the first few weeks you guys were struggling, and we heard earlier that you only learn something by struggling, right? And so, but once you guys got into it, I felt like you guys got into a really groove, and people were talking about stuff they're not using anymore, what they are using. This is as with complex problems, a big part about it is discussions based, and so heavy focus on the classroom discussions and the engagement from that. But I look at their memos, and I'm a business professor, so I make them write a business memo. So I'm making them learn how to do that early in the time here. So that's one skill they're absolutely going to be walking out of the door with, from the class here. But yeah, I look at it on content. I look at mostly. I'm more interested in their reflections, and their takeaways than actually what they got out of it. And that for me is the funnest part to read. And to see what they've come up with, what changed their mind after looking at this. Because every class session obviously is a different topic. And so the AI generates around that particular topic. So for me, it's just fun seeing what you guys are getting out of it and how that might change your mindset. But that's where the discussion part comes in the classroom.
Thank you. I have a question for students. So with AI, do you find yourself working less because AI help, or do you find yourself working more or differently? What's your take on that?
That's a really good question. Yeah, you can go.
So for finding resources, I definitely work less because it can spit out more individualized for what I'm looking for. But I noticed myself reflecting more when I use AI. So as Professor White was saying, we do have to write how we will grow as a leader. And only after the second week of the course, I went up to him, I said, I'm becoming a better person because of this class and how it's questioning how I am as a leader and how I can become better. So I've noticed since using AI, it brings up questions that I don't think I otherwise would have asked myself that is now making me grow more as a person.
I'm gonna have to say that I work more, I think. And I think it's because AI provides you the tools that you need to like, get certain points down, but it's not perfect. And sometimes I'll see this and I'll be like, that's not what I wanted to say. That's not, and I don't want that. That's not me. Like, sure, your words are flowy and maybe they sound better, but that's not who I am. And so I think it's a great resource. It's a tool. Take it with a grain of salt, is what I always say. Use it with terms. I think it just depends on what I'm using it for, but I think Professor White did an excellent job in incorporating it in our class to make us all feel like we could use ChatGPT without, sacrificing our academic integrity.
Thank you. It's so much. I'm so happy to hear from students to see how their experiences are when it comes to AI. Do you have a question for you when it comes to your peers? How are you navigating those conversations? Because obviously you're a success story. So I'm just curious about how you navigating those conversations with your other peers.
I mean, I'll be honest, I've been in environments where my peers have straight up just used ChatGPT to write essays or to create content. And when that happens, I again tell them, like, you have to trust in your own ability because, sure, your writing might not get you an A, it might get you a C, and ChatGPT might be able to give you that, level, but you have to see it as a work in progress. And the one thing that I've always stayed true is like having integrity, right? Like, I would much rather get a D in a class than get an A because I cheated. And that it's a morals and it's a values thing, but I also think that you have to have confidence in yourself to build that. And I think what Professor White does here is he says, you might not get 100% on every assignment, but here's what I can promise you. I can meet with you to help you become better. So a lot of my classes, they focus on progression, saying that in the beginning, you're not going to be up here, and that's okay because we are going to help you. So test corrections, revisions, right? And I think that's what builds confidence. Okay, my writing's not going to be perfect. My content, whatever I produce, won't be perfect, but I know that it has the ability to be elevated because my professors make me feel safe and trusted.
I think also with the discussion aspect added into the class, I think it holds students more accountable to use it in a way where the AI is more of a tool than an answer. Because you're discussing on it, you have to have somewhat of a deeper understanding of what you're talking about. So I've noticed with the discussion aspect, students have been more engaging with the AI and thinking more critically because they know they're going to be further questioned on it in class.
I want to offer a couple comments. Tommy White is an extraordinary teacher. Early on, when we went down this AI road, he told me in very blunt terms he was not on board. This summer, he became AI obsessed. And then he said to me one day, he said, by the way, I'm teaching a class this fall. There's no books, no reading, only prompts. I have no idea if it's going to work. Okay, but think about what he's done and what you heard for the students. Okay, the teacher, the instructor moved from being a lecturer to a coach, facilitator, mentor. No reading assignments, no articles, no books. Interdisciplinary, business professor teaching a psych and CLEG. We should all be interdisciplinary. Okay, the silos in education are horrific. Okay. Lots of group projects. I hear from students all the time, these group projects suck. One person's a peacock, shows off the whole time. The next person shows up in pajamas, never does the work. this person's impossible to deal with, they won't listen, and I say, welcome to the last 40 years of my life. Okay, so that's great. Ultimately, I think what Professor White is teaching is curiosity. He's created ownership, and look at how these students are going to be prepared for the workforce. They own it. Okay, so I think we're seeing the future of teaching here. Could be wrong, but I think something around this.
So I'm happy to share all of my prompts and everything with you guys. So there's a QR code up here. I have 20 copies of it here, so I'll just hand them around to share them if you guys want to take them, but email me if you want them. They're actually the full written prompts, and they're also in ChatGPT's and Perplexity also. So, but I give you the full prompt and riffed off of it, and if you find something better, let me know, because I probably changed the prompts 10 times in this class. You know, even in the middle of the classes, I got feedback from the students on what was working and what wasn't working from it.
Thank you, Tommy. Excellent. And how about a round of applause for our students?